What is it like to attend a live performance in virtual reality? What is it like to create such a performance? My name is Michaelah Wales, and I am presenting on the production of virtual reality theater. Virtual reality theater, or just VR theater, is a medium that draws from live performance, video games, film, and interaction design. Theater makers who want to bring their work into the virtual space are confronted with many obstacles. When they are no longer limited by the laws of physics, it is difficult for theater makers to know what is within the realm of possibility for a performance. VR theater is a new medium, and so teams working to produce VR theater performances do not have established conventions to rely upon. In addition, the tools available for creating VR theater are low-level and often intended for use by software developers. To understand how VR theater is created, we interviewed a production team about their experience creating a new VR theater piece. This team had extensive experience in mounting traditional theater plays, and their work on this project is advancing knowledge of VR theater. To overcome the challenges of VR theater production, this team adapted their modes of communication, adopted an iterative production process, and blended the roles of developers and designers. This new VR play is titled You Should Have Stayed Home and describes the experience of the playwright Tommy Taylor as he is arrested and detained during the G20 summit protests in Toronto, the largest mass arrest in Canadian history. During the performance, Taylor and up to 10 audience members wear VR headsets to access the virtual sets. The audience can explore the sets from a first-person perspective as Taylor guides them through scenes in the city of Toronto. Audience members are embodied as a virtual avatar. The play was presented in the VR chat platform. Here, you can see Taylor's avatar as he guides the audience through a virtual set representing downtown Toronto.
Streets. I mean, we can't see any protesters, but these tactical teams in these armored trucks are now showing up everywhere. And we think it's best to get home right now because these people look more like robots than they do people.
Our research questions focused on the challenges this team faced as they created the VR production, what roles and processes were involved, and how designing the audience experience changed for this medium. We interviewed 11 members of the production team for You Should Have Stayed Home and conducted a reflexive thematic analysis on the interview transcripts. The production team had extensive experience in traditional theater production in their respective roles. Virtual reality theater is an emerging medium, and even the most experienced VR developer on this project had only worked on 2 VR productions prior to You Should Have Stayed Home. The first of our themes was that the team struggled to understand what was possible in this medium. Hosting theater performances in VR opens up design possibilities that would be impossible with traditional theater. In VR, a theatrical production is not constrained by the laws of physics or the contours of a physical stage. Limitations in this design space come from the tools, software, and time available to the team. In VR, the production team has the power to decide if their audience members will be able to speak or move during the performance, to make cityscapes appear in an instant, or make a scene transition using a flying bus. This lack of creative limitations made it difficult to imagine what form the final production would take, and what that experience would be like for their audience members. The team allowed the original story of You Should Have Stayed Home to inform their decisions about the audience experience. Team members related the following as an example of designing an audience experience. It would have been possible to have audience members act out the experience of being arrested, but the team decided that it was disrespectful to play act at being arrested, and so chose to keep the audience in a position of witness. The actor, the playwright Taylor himself, walks the audience through virtual locations and describes the experience of his arrest to the audience. The virtual spaces that Taylor guides the audience through were built to reflect his loss of agency as the show progresses, gradually removing mobility from the audience members. They begin the show in an outdoor park at the protest, where they are free to walk around the set. Then, they hear about the arrest by police on a crowded side street, where their movement is constrained by a wall of riot police. Next, the audience is placed inside a prison bus, where they lose the ability to move their avatar at all, except to look around. This example shows how the performance world was manipulated to convey the emotional experience of a loss of agency, reflected by the audience's loss of mobility. This kind of manipulation would be impossible for a traditional production. To design this audience experience, the production team first needed to learn what the VR medium enabled them to do, and then decide how they could use it in the performance. The second theme captures how team members went about their work in a virtual space and what tools they needed to be effective. Team members were not all based in the same time zone. They had to adapt to conducting rehearsals in the VR Chat virtual world platform using a VR headset. Despite not being physically present in the same room, the team members experienced feelings of presence while working together in VR worlds. Team members also compared rehearsing in VR Chat to playing a video game, and indulged in fun activities like jumping off the top of the virtual CN tower. Creative discussions and rehearsals were conducted in VR Chat. As the team was dispersed and unable to hold in-person production meetings, they may have chosen to conduct all of their synchronous meetings in VR Chat, but the director made the decision early in the process that rehearsals would begin with Zoom calls. Incorporating check-ins with their real faces, in addition to their VR Chat avatars, helped the team to establish a rapport that supported remote collaboration. The team's developers and theater designers needed to collaborate closely to create tools that would allow the lighting and sound designers to do their work in the virtual space. Theater production tools do not exist in the virtual space until the developers build them. On the production of You Should Have Stayed Home, the developers were building these tools while the designers' work was already underway. Instead of being able to do their work themselves, the designers had to expand their creative processes to involve the developers, working together to accomplish tasks that can be done by individuals in traditional theater using existing tools. The third theme describes the processes the team used and their experience adapting to these processes. In the new medium of VR theater, no single team member could envision the show in its final form. Collaboration and input from across the team was required to adopt an iterative and incremental developmental model. The You Should Have Stayed Home team produced iterations of the performance that led to updates to the script and to the performance space until the VR show took shape. This is unlike in traditional theater, where a set is designed for a performance based on the script, and that set is constructed concurrently with the rehearsal process. Rehearsals in VR were also much shorter than they would have been in person, as team members would encounter nausea if they spent too long in the VR headset without a break. The stage manager for this production strictly enforced headset breaks every 45 minutes and capped the team at 3 total hours of headset time per day. With comparatively less time spent in the rehearsal space, the iterative developmental model provided opportunities for designers to develop ideas asynchronously. Different ideas were then trialed during the limited rehearsal time. Now that we have presented our 3 themes, let's return to our research questions. We first asked, what roles and processes were involved in the production of this VR play? We found that the role of a developer on this VR theater project was deeply embedded in the creative processes of the other team members, shaking up the traditional theater hierarchy. The dev team was needed to fulfill creative roles, for example, taking on the role of a set designer and building the virtual performance space. It is likely that as more experience is gained in VR theater, entirely new roles may emerge, for example, that of a creative technologist responsible for VR set design. Our second research question asked what barriers and challenges the team faced. One of the greatest challenges was that the tools that make up traditional theater environments are not available in virtual reality. VR versions of these tools are needed to empower creative work and help creatives to understand what is possible. There is a tension that exists between the immediate need for these tools and the danger that tools designed today may impose limitations on audience experience. Equally, there is a risk that the tools designed may be overly informed by traditional theater standards, limiting the expressiveness afforded by VR. Another challenge was remote team building. The director managed this by establishing early on that they would use multiple communication technologies. The team members confirmed that combining synchronous and asynchronous communications strengthened their discussions. Our third research question asked about how the VR medium impacts what form of play is possible. Theater makers exploring this new medium need to be empowered to harness the affordances of VR. With the power to create theater in a space where they can change the rules of the universe, they can create new experiences for audiences, experiences that draw from theater and interaction design traditions. In this performance, the audience is guided through a live, scripted experience. Audience members are considered witnesses to a performance, not players of a game. They are held at a critical distance, while being completely immersed in the virtual performance space. This creates a theatrical experience that is unique to VR. This paper represents early work in understanding VR theater as a medium. While VR theater is still nascent, this paper contributes to a better understanding of what its affordances are and how VR theater teams are organized. We highlight the challenges this team encountered to show where concepts from interaction design were employed. We include input from a team of theater makers whose voices are important to the conversation about how tools for VR theater are designed, because they are going to be the ones to use them for creative projects. We share the lessons learned by the You Should Have Stayed Home team to support the creation of future VR theater performances and deeper exploration of the possibilities of staging theater in virtual worlds.